I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, your home for deer hunting news, stories, and strategies. And now, your host, Mark Kenyon.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kenyon, and this is episode number 236. And today in the show, we are here again with another Rut Radio report, getting updates from across the country on the latest whitetail activity, conditions, behavior, and the tactics that are working right this very moment.
All right, and welcome to this week's episode of Wired to Hunt's Rut Radio, brought to you by Onyx. This is your host, Spencer Newharth, and on the other side of the line is Mark, who is yet again slacking, not in front of a computer. So we have him on his cell phone. How's it going, Mark?
You know, doing the best I can here, man. I'm driving home from Montana right now. I've been elk hunting over the past, for 5 days I was elk hunting, and then I've had a day and a half of meetings, and then it was right to the truck and onto the road. Trying to get home, time to spend a little time with the family, and then be ready for the Michigan archery opener. So very excited about all the above.
Yeah, I don't take back the slacking thing, though. How are you? How do you feel about the Michigan opener? You will be hunting on Monday, correct?
Yeah. Michigan opens on Monday. I'm really excited about it. Last time I checked the weather, I've been as long as the 15-day outlook has been available, I've been checking it out, and it's pretty good as far as it's not too hot. It looks like we're gonna have just below average temperatures maybe, which is usually a great thing. The only downside is that those temperatures have been in place for a while now, so it's going to be almost a week of 60-degree temperatures leading up to the opener. It's not like it was really warm and then all of a sudden we had that front hit. I think that usually those temperatures, I know you're not necessarily a believer on this, but I feel like you get some of that best activity right when the change occurs, just after the change. There's not so much change in this situation. So I think it'll be pretty decent. It definitely won't be bad, but I'm not looking at it as one of those blessed cold fronts that get everything up and moving. So that's my high-level thought process, at least.
Yeah, a lot of the people that I've talked to have referenced today, September 26th, as being one of the days to be out there, because this is at the beginning of that cold front. Rut Fresh, people were talking about as well, that were providing reports. So, if you're listening to this, the end of this week is going to be pretty solid, or people are optimistic, at least, for that cold front, hunting it right now.
Yeah, I think it's a great time to be in the woods. For people's seasons that are just opening, it's really nice because you've got the limited hunting pressure since mostly no one has been out up to this point, plus the good weather. I mean, this could be one of your better chances of the year, at least before the rut. So I'm going to win it. I'll be hunting one of my better early season stands and take a stab on the Holyfield property. And if that doesn't work out, I'll kind of back out and reassess the plan. But opening night will be a highly anticipated evening, that's for sure.
Well, I have not been hunting for a while now. I think it's been over 2 weeks probably since I've been in a tree stand. And like I said last week, I'm kind of saving up those wife vacation days because I'll start burning them here as soon as we get off the phone. I have an antelope hunt this weekend. And then after I get home from that, it is like craziness until December. I don't know if we've talked about this, but I have 9 buck tags this fall. So I will be busy once. Ridiculous. Yeah, once we hit mid-October, like then through December, I will be maximum amount of hunting. So that is why I've kind of taken my foot off the gas pedal for right now.
I guess that's reasonable. If your wife's going to let you go chase 9 buck tags down, I suppose you could take a few weeks off on the front end to give her a little time and attention.
That's right. So on this week's episode, we talked to Dave Bechtel from Chase Nation TV in Wisconsin. Then we go to Tennessee, and from down south hunting, it's Adam Cruz. And then we talked to Jake Gregas from Daybreak Ranch in South Dakota. And then from Louisiana Bow Hunter in Louisiana is Kyler Moppert.
Nice. Sounds like a great diversity of characters and areas. I like that. I'm looking forward to hearing this one, especially since I'll be actually hunting now whitetails. It's been a little bit kind of like you. I've had a 3-week break from whitetails, and that's kind of been hurt my soul. So I'm ready to get after it.
So one thing I wanted to bring up was that Jake from South Dakota brings it up on this week's episode. He also brought it up in a Rut Fresh report a few weeks ago. And for me, when he said this, it was kind of a light bulb moment. Last year, the night before I killed that big buck, which is 2 days from now, September 28th, the night before that, I had a couple younger bucks, like 2.5 or 3.5-year-olds, come towards the cornfield, and they bed down before they got there, and they basically stayed there until evening, and then got up and moved around. The next night, I saw it again with a younger buck that he had came out and bedded till like 30 minutes before shooting light ended and got up and went into the corn, and it was just like a really weird, kind of a transition bedding that they had done right at sunset. And Jake brings that up on this week's episode too, how that's something he's seen in the past, and he's already seen it 2 or 3 times this year. And we hunt similar areas. Now we're a few 100 miles apart, but when I say similar areas, I mean big agriculture. So if that's something that you've seen before, this is really fascinating to me that we've both witnessed this now, kind of that end of September thing. Slide into my DMs. I'd love to get more reports on this same thing. Is that something you've ever seen, Mark, that you've noticed bucks kind of going into like a micro bed right before sunset?
I'm not sure if I have seen. I mean, I've heard of similar stuff like that. I mean, it makes sense. I've seen like does and fawns definitely do that. I've seen like a fawn or doe come out, feed for a little bit, and then go, then go back in bed like just inside the edge of the timber or the cover. But I can't say I've seen bucks do that. Man, at least not off the top of my head. So that's interesting. I'm curious what that's about. I can sort of understand it. They're going to move out, survey the situation, but they're not quite ready to go out to the wide open yet, so they're going to hold off a little bit. It's kind of like just to prolong the transitionary period. I mean, is that kind of how you're seeing it?
Yeah, Jake goes into more detail on it in the episode, so we don't have to go into it too much more, but it's a trend that I'm fascinated in tracking. If other people have seen this too, like this bedding after the bedding before going to food. So that's something that, with these late September, early October hunts, I'd be interested if other people witness that at all as well.
Well, very interesting. I will be interested to hear what he has to say about it. So maybe we should shut up and get our Rut reporting guest contributors on the line.
All right. We'll talk to you next week, Mark.
Thank you, Spencer.
Before we get to our first update, let's pause for a word from our sponsors at Whitetail Properties. This week with Whitetail Properties, we are joined by Dave Skinner, a land specialist out of Kentucky. And Dave is going to be telling us about what to look for when buying a property with intentions of early season whitetail hunting.
In Kentucky, our season comes in September. And if you're looking specifically for that early season hunt, there's a couple things to keep in mind. One, just like late season, food sources are king. And there's 2 food sources in Kentucky that trump everything else in September: soybeans and acorns. If I'm looking to hunt specifically that early season, I want to make certain I either have soybeans on the property or adjacent to the property. More than anything, though, acorns are always number one. I want to know that there's white oak trees on the property, because when those acorns are falling, that's where the deer will be.
If you'd like to learn more and to see the properties that Dave currently has listed for sale, visit whitetailproperties.com/Skinner. That's SKINNER. All right, and joining us on the line first is Dave Bechtel out of Wisconsin from Chase Nation TV. Now, Dave, in Wisconsin, what would you say the buck activity has been lately on a scale of 1 to 10?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say either a 5 or a 6 right now. The opening part of the season is extremely hot, higher temperatures than we normally have had. So that shut down a lot of activity. And just this last week, we hit a cold front, and deer started to be on their feet. It's not super crazy right now, but within the last couple of days, you're starting to see some people shooting deer and a lot more activity. I mean, we've had a 20-degree difference within the last couple of weeks.
You took advantage of that cold front, Dave. Tell us a little bit about that setup where you shot that nice whitetail.
Yeah, it was an area that had scouted a bunch leading up to the season, and it's actually pretty sweet. It's a tamarack swamp with a ton of cattails, ton of water that butts up to a bean field, and then has a tree line that is just loaded with oaks. So it's a perfect scenario as far as if they're in the oaks, you're going to be out getting them on that tree line, but if it's in a bean field, you're right there. And I was set up in a staging area right on a transition line, and it worked like clockwork. I ended up seeing a nice buck, thought the hunt was over, and then next thing I know, here this buck came. He came right out of the cattails about 10 to 15 minutes before close, and I was fortunate enough to make a good shot at him and, had a 20-yard recovery.
So had those oaks not been there, do you not think you would have had a chance at that deer?
I personally think he was headed into the bean field. I do. A lot of the oaks have dropped, and they were dropping leading up to the season. I do think there's a lot of acorns on the ground right now, but I think he was probably working his way to those beans because a lot of those were getting hit still. I do a lot of driving around at night, right before dark when I can't hunt, trying to get a good gauge on where I'm seeing deer, and I was still catching a lot of deer out in the bean field. But with the temperatures being the way they've been, they seem to be coming through the beans, right at dark. If you're not set up within a certain range of the bed or in a staging area leading into the bean field, you're not seeing them.
You mentioned on that hunt that you saw another buck as well. Were these two deer hanging out, or are all the bachelor groups around you broken up?
They came in separate, completely separate. They were not running together. My wife was actually hunting on the edge of another bean field not too far from me, and she had a nice encounter with a bigger buck, and then had two other bucks that actually did come through together, but I don't necessarily think they were in the bachelor group still by any means.
Have you found any sign making start to appear then, or do you think we're a little ways off that yet as far as scrapes and rubs?
I have found some rubs. Not crazy. A few rubs. Have not done any street searching as of yet. When I'm in the woods, it's strictly hunting, and a lot of the areas I go into, it's either a hang and hunt scenario or I'm going in to kill. So I haven't done a lot of venturing just because when the time's been right, I've been going in to kill.
Going forward then this next week or so, what do you think that buck activity is going to be on a scale of 1 to 10 in Wisconsin?
A scale of 1 to 10, I think it's going to start picking up a bit. I would say a solid 6, possibly even a 7. Yeah. Cold fronts moving in. I know Friday we're supposed to have a northwest wind and a high of 56. So Friday night would be a night I'm in the woods if I could still hunt.
Congrats on the great deer, Dave, and thanks for joining me.
Anytime.
All right, and joining us on the line next is Adam Cruz from Down South Hunting Podcast in Tennessee. Now, Adam, in Tennessee, what would you say the buck activity has been lately on a scale of 1 to 10?
I'm going to say, based off of trail cameras that I'm running on our private farm in the southern part of Tennessee, the movement's actually spiked, and I would put it at around a 7 or an 8 at this moment.
Why do you think that movement has spiked recently?
I think it has a lot to do with where our trail cameras are positioned. They're on sides of ridges that hold a lot of acorns, generally speaking, and I think we've got these cameras in really good spots this year. A few weeks ago, we were barely getting any bucks on camera at all, just maybe a doe here and there. And then within the last week or two, I'm getting hundreds of pictures of different bucks. I've probably got 5 new bucks that showed up on camera within the last week. Not all of them are mature bucks, but just a ton of deer activity. And I really think it's around the fact that the acorns are now dropping, and those deer kind of moving into these traditional spots that they're in this time of year.
How about other food sources? Do you think the deer right now are ignoring food plots and soybeans, stuff like that?
I think it all depends on, what the situation of the plot is. So on the soybean side, if they're still green, the deer will definitely be hitting them. And if I had access to soybeans right now on some private ground, that's exactly where I would be hunting until they turn brown.
You mentioned you run around a lot of trail cameras. That movement that you've been seeing, is it mostly daytime or nighttime?
It's about 50-50 actually. But when I say the 50% of daytime, it's in that dusk and dawn type situation. So right at first shooting light, we'll have deer hanging around for maybe 20 minutes. And then kind of the same scenario at the back half of the day. The deer start showing up maybe 20 minutes before a shooting light ends. And then I'm getting some pictures of some does during the middle of the day. But as far as buck movement during the middle of the day, I'm not getting just hardly any. It mostly is at night and then right there at first and last light. So if we were trying to get in on these deer right now in the morning, it would pretty much be impossible unless we picked their right bed that they were going to, and then we might be able to have some success. Really the way to arrow a buck right now is to actually be able to hunt those evenings and get in there on them.
Is that something you think will change over these next few weeks, or are acorns going to be the focus for a while?
It's going to be my focus all the way through October, really, and that's my main food source that I hunt on my private land. And on public land, I got some other areas that I can hunt where there's some corn that's standing right now, and as soon as that's cut, I'm going to be heading there as fast as I can and hopefully beat everyone else there.
Are you seeing any kind of ruddy activity in the woods to this point as far as scrapes or rubs?
I'm not seeing any scrapes or rubs, but I am getting some deer on camera sparring, which is always really fun to watch and have pictures of that.
Well, how do you think the weather changes things this time of year, if we get a good cold front or if a warm front comes through instead?
This time of year, I'm just not certain that the weather has that much effect when it actually dips, but when it's hotter, I think that can really play in a hunter's favor if you have a good source of water and you know where your deer are bedding and how they're getting to the water, plus being there where food is nearby. So if you have that combination of those three things, the food, water, and bed, you've got a recipe for success. And really this time of year, I think is one of the easier times of year to kill a good buck in the state of Tennessee. That's when I've traditionally had the best encounters and killed my best deer. So I'm really excited what the next couple of weeks brings, and the hot weather doesn't bother me because I know where they like to go get their water.
Going forward then this next week or so, what do you think that buck activity is going to be on a scale of 1 to 10 in Tennessee?
I'm going to say it's going to probably stay in that 6 to 7 range. The temperature, like I said, I'm not sure that it has much effect on deer movement right now, especially, but it is kind of lower temps than it has been. So if nothing else, that excites me and it wants me to get in the woods more. And having to fight that 100-degree temperature and all that sweat coming down, that's not usually that much fun.
Well, look forward to hearing your updates on down south hunting. Thanks for joining me, Adam.
Hey, I appreciate it, Spencer. It's truly a pleasure, sir.
All right, and joining us on the line next is Jake Gregus from Daybreak Ranch in South Dakota. Now, Jake, in South Dakota, what would you say the buck activity has been lately on a scale of 1 to 10?
Right now in central South Dakota, I'd probably say the buck activity is around a 6 out of 10. And I say that because they're still kind of transitioning from shedding their velvet into their fall ranges, and you still see some bachelor groups together, and a lot more nocturnal movement yet. All the crops are still standing for the most part. So I would say it's probably a 6 out of 10.
Do you think those crops are going to be coming out anytime soon, and how does your strategy change once the combines get going?
Yeah, we've had some actually wet weather lately, and that's kind of delaying the harvest a little bit. Some of the soybeans have been harvested already, and I know there's cornfields that are ready to come out, and actually some that were cut for silage already. So that changes strategy a little bit. That's holding a lot of the deer. The corn and sunflowers are holding most of the deer, at least right around here for us. And as those start to come out, those deer will kind of slide into the next best cover nearest to that typically. And so you might be looking to hunt. If you were hunting field edges before, you might be hunting more of those cattail sloughs or old abandoned farmyards where the deer slid away, quarter mile from where that field where they were living to the next best cover.
Are you finding any sign making yet?
Yeah, just the last 3-4 days, we've really noticed more rubbing posts that we put out for the deer getting hit hard, and the shelter belts have rub lines starting to pop up along them, and there's scrapes we're stumbling onto too. So they're definitely starting to work those rubs and scrapes.
Well, a few weeks ago, Jake, you wrote a report for Rut Fresh, and you talked about how when the crops are still standing like this, that the bucks tend to do this thing where they have a transition bedding, that they get up out of their bed late in the evening, they'll bed down someplace else before dark, and there's an opportunity there for hunters to get a chance at mature deer. Will you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, I actually witnessed it happen last night. Was sitting on a dugout, a water hole tucked inside of a sunflower field, and 2 bucks came in there, and one came and actually drank. The other one never did drink, but laid down right at the end of legal shooting. He actually bedded down right there in the grass next to the dugout. So we see that a lot. Kind of makes it difficult to kill deer, especially when they're doing something like that where they might be killable for the last half hour of the day, but you got to be really right in their bedroom to do it. And right now, their bedroom is typically inside of these crop fields, so it makes it pretty difficult unless you got a really nice tucked away spot where that buck feels secure and he's going to get up and maybe feed and just stretch his feet. Seems like they're feeding all day inside of a corn or sunflower field, snacking and bedding down. And it's almost like they just have to get up and move, but they're not confident enough to go out in the open where they might not be so secure until after dark. So we actually see a lot of our better deer kind of in these secluded, tucked away spots inside of a crop field.
But that's something that you won't see as much once those crops do come out, correct?
Well, they can do it all fall, but you really see it now when the crops are standing and they don't really have a mission to be on per se. So here, as the fall progresses, those bucks will be more on the move and more killable on their feet longer. But in the summer, we see that the most when it's warmer, especially where they're like I said, it's almost like their version of cabin fever. They just can't stand to be hidden in that crop field any longer, and they need to get out and move, but they don't want to move where they're headed for the evening quite yet.
Going forward then in this next week or so, what do you think that buck activity will be on a scale of 1 to 10 in South Dakota?
I think from here on out it should only get better unless we get some really hot weather or something that might make them move less. I would say in the next week or so it'd probably be a 7 or so out of 10. And those bucks they're killable, but with this cold weather I thought that they would be even more visible, but they're still moving pretty late in the evening, and and then you have to be pretty lucky to catch them right at first thing in the morning before they make it back to where they're going to spend the rest of the day. So I would say a 7 out of 10 for now.
Well, good luck the rest of the season, Jake. I know you're going to kill a couple good deer this year. It's not even a matter of if, it's just when. So thanks for joining me.
Well, hopefully. You too, Spencer. Appreciate it.
All right, and joining me on the line last is Kyler Moppert from Louisiana Bow Hunter in Louisiana. Now, Kyler, in Louisiana, what would you say the buck activity has been lately on a scale of 1 to 10?
Well, on a scale of 1 to 10, for our open areas are going to be area 10, area 3, area 7. We've got a pretty substantial buck activity for this early in the season because, number one, those are the only areas that are open. So only about maybe a quarter of the state is open for hunting. But the reason why that is because that population of deer is more of a coastal population that is in a different rut cycle. They rut a lot earlier in the year than some of our other deer we have in the state. It would be comparable to maybe a Florida rut cycle of a lot of their swamp deer. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably put it about a 5 or a 6 right now with the heat and a lot of oppressiveness with the weather and just being out in the woods and not being easy for them to want to pick up and move during the day. But the other parts of the state, I would probably put it about a 5 or a 6, mainly because there's no hunting pressure on them, but they're still not moving just because, it's still been 100 degrees down here, but the season opens up on Monday the 1st for the rest of the season as well. So this time of year, people aren't exactly that gung-ho about getting out in the woods because you need about 7 thermocells and almost an AC unit strapped to your back. But if you can get out in the woods and you can sit in an area where you've got some rutted bucks moving through, or you've got some bachelor groups moving through that haven't broken up yet, then you've got a pretty good chance of seeing something.
And how do those setups vary for those guys who are maybe hunting the rut right now versus everyone else who has an opener coming up on Monday?
So we are a state that does have legalized feeding, and this is something that we actually talk a lot about on our podcast that we've got. That's kind of a hot topic for a lot of people in the country. Some people like it, some people don't. But the thing that's interesting about Louisiana is that we hunt areas that is so thick, you have 0% chance of ever doing any type of spot and stalk, any sort of setting up on observation stands. We're hunting thickets where you might only have one small hole to put an arrow in. And so you've got to be able to bring those deer in close without having to track them all the time. But the setup is going to be pretty much the same. If you can attract the does, then and it's the rut, you can probably bring in some bucks in behind them. So what a lot of people do is we're hunting 100 yards from the feeder, or hunting 100 yards from wherever the food source is that we're putting out, and we're trying to let the does pass and then focus in on the bucks that may be behind them, right? And kind of get out of that circle, if you will, that circle of vulnerability around your feeder where a buck might not come into. Get out behind that and hope that you're on the right trail for them coming in.
Do those different deer populations in Louisiana react to weather differently? Say you were to get a huge rainstorm for a few days, or if a cold front comes in, do you notice those two different populations acting differently when that happens?
Absolutely. I would say rain is our number one motivator for getting deer up and moving. We're pretty level when it comes to weather. It's going to either be hot or it's going to be hotter. We don't have a whole bunch of cold fronts coming through. We don't have a whole bunch of, huge temperature swings until maybe into December, late January. But early in the season, if you're going to hunt from now until Thanksgiving, you pretty much know you're going to be in a short sleeve shirt and in 80 to 90 degrees that you're going to be hunting in once the sun comes up. So, like I said, it's pretty stable as far as weather for us. Unfortunately, it's stable on the hot end. But because of that, the deer, you do see a lot of I wouldn't say a lot of it. You do see primarily very crepuscular deer where they are only moving in the morning, they're only moving in the evening, and there's not a whole lot of hour or two after sunrise, hour and two before sunset. It is like right there with the sunset, right there with the sunrise. So a lot of very short hunts sometimes. It's not really worth it to get out there at 1 in the afternoon at this time of year. A lot of times you can climb up at 4:30, 5 o'clock, hunt for an hour and a half until it gets dark, and if you don't see anything in that time period, just come back the next morning.
Going forward then in this next week or so, what do you think that buck activity is going to be on a scale of 1 to 10 in Louisiana?
Scale of 1 to 10, I think it's going to stay the same. I think it's going to stay a 4 or a 5. Just this time of year with the type of weather patterns and the heat that we have, it's hard to expect them to get up and move until another month or two down the road.
It's great intel, Kyler. Good luck on your approaching opener, and thanks for joining me.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And that concludes this week's episode of Wired to Hunt's Rut Radio. Thank you to Dave, Adam, Jake, and Kyler for joining me, and thank you guys for listening. As always, make sure you follow Wired to Hunt on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and follow at Spencer Newharth and at Rutfresh on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. The next time I talk to you guys, it will be October, and I'm so excited for all the rest of the states in the Midwest to open up. Good luck to everybody, and stay wired to hunt.
I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins.